First thing you want to do when starting up Blender for the first time is go up to File, User Preference, and Input. By default, it should show right. You want to click left, and your left click is going to be your main click for everything. Be sure to select Save User Settings, Exit, and also be sure to pull up this window here by hitting in, and that will bring up the transform window here. And what this is used for is whenever you move an object, it will show right here. So if you ever want to set it to a specific number or reset it back to 0, you can bring it back home. So to move an object or select an object, you left click off of it will do nothing, but if you accidentally hold and drag, it will pick up that object. But if you ever start doing something, you can always hit escape or right click, and that will cancel anything that you're doing. But if you accidentally grab it and let go, then you can always undo with Control Z, just like normal, or you can go up here and reset your location. You can even lock your locations if you want to. So as you can see, it gets rid of the little handles, and you can't move anything else. You can also set your rotation here, or you can set it by pressing R. R will rotate in every direction. If you press an axis like X, Y, or Z, so if we press X, it will only rotate on the X, Y will rotate on the Y, Z on the Z. Same if you want to do something similar to this, you can hit G, G as in grab, and if you hit X, Y, or Z, it will only move along that axis. And similar to in AutoCAD, you can also type in something you want. So if we press 2, it will be down in the bottom left corner. So if I even click and drag it here, on the bottom left corner, it will show you the distance that it's telling you to travel. So if we hit -2, it will bring us back to 0. And we can also scale. Scale is S. So if we hit scale, it will scale in every direction, unless we hit X, Y, or Z. Now if we want to move it on 2 different directions, but let's say we want to move it on X and Y but not Z, we can do Shift Z, and that will do X and Y. Shift X will do Y and Z. And this works for rotation or the transform. Transform would be grab. So X or Shift X will move it on a plane. And what is unique to Blender is if you scale something, right now you have your scale at 1. You always need your scale at 1 for certain tools to work properly, or sometimes even with 3D printing. So you always need your scale at 1, because if we scale, say, X here, now our scale's out of whack. You can always set a dimension, say you need this at 5, but your scale will also go with it. So if you want to go to an edit tool to edit, we hit tab, or you can go down here to the bottom left and go to edit mode, and if you hover over, it will show you it should show you what shortcut you have. Attached to it. Normally it does. Normally it will show like this. What shortcut is there, and you can even change it from here, or you can change it in the user preference. But it will be tab to go in and out of edit mode, and in edit mode we're going to have vertices, vertexes, edges, and faces. So if we select a vertice, we can move that individually. Select an edge, move that individually. But if we move this far up, we can see that our dimensions have changed. So it's taller in the z-axis, but it didn't change our scale. And one of the issues we have with, if we don't have our scale on 1:1, if I wanted to bevel, say, these 4 corners, and I do Control B and drag away from the center, it's not going to bevel properly. It's going to have different angles, which is maybe hard to tell on here, different angles. This is going to be the same angle, but here, since the scale is different, this will be an uneven angle. So unless that's what you want, if you want these to end up being a rectangle up here, the same rectangle you have right here, then this would work. But if you want your scale to be 1 but still hold the shape, you can do Control A, or you should be able to go over here as well. Apply, Control A. I usually do rotation and scale just to be safe, but if you did just scale, this will set it back to 1. So now if we go into edit mode, grab those same 4 edges, Control B, you'll now get what looks like something uneven here, but all of our angles are exactly the same. So it's a perfect bevel all the way around. And you can always undo. And also with bevel, along with some other tools, you can scroll on the mouse wheel to add more dimension to it, more resolution to it. So if you want to turn your bevel into a curve, then you can do it that way. And you can undo, and be sure whenever you use something like the bevel tool, which is Control B, that it's always going to be from the center of whatever you've selected, that it's going to pull away from that. So if you end up something really crazy looking like this, then you can click out of it, move your mouse away from the center here, Control B, and then it will be a little easier to handle. But always be sure to make sure that you watch the scale. So Control A to apply scale or even rotation. Because if that's not right, then especially with rotation, if it's actually rotated here, and if you take that into your 3D printing software, then it might actually show it like this. Because it's non-destructive editing. So if you don't apply that scale, it's not actually making that object at that rotation or dimensions. So possibly, I think whenever you make an STL, now it will kind of ignore the scale, I believe. But just in case, if you scaled it this way, but it came out in your 3D printer software like this, be sure to apply that scale so that it makes sure that it comes out like this. So whenever you finally get an object that you want to try to print, go up to File and then Export and STL. Right now I have a shortcut on this, but normally there's no shortcut. Go to STL. And I actually had to edit some Python code in order for this to be the default. But right now you're always going to have to make sure that this is on selection only. Because if this is not on selection only, and you have more than one object in your scene, it's going to, you only want to print this object. It's going to put both of these as one object. So whatever you have selected is what's going to export your STL here. So if you go to export STL, make sure selection only is on. Choose where you want your file to be, say documents, and then if you ever wanted to add a folder, you can add it, I believe, with this button, but you can actually just type it out, put slash, and if you hit enter, it will ask if you want to write a new directory, and then you can name your file here and then export, and then you can pull that up in Cura. And also to duplicate, like I just did earlier, you can hit Shift D and it will duplicate that object, and you can move it wherever you like. So say you want it right there, 5, and they're butted up together. And then you can always hit the delete key or the X key to delete something, and it will always ask you if you actually want to delete it. So click right there. And you can always undo if you accidentally delete, or if you want to delete something specific like in edit mode, if you try to delete something in edit mode, like say this line here, you can choose to delete whatever you want, but it's always going to ask you what it is you want to delete. Do you want to delete the vertices, the edges, the face only, or you can even dissolve edges. So if we had some issues with our mesh, and I'm going to cut here with K, press enter, and I'm going to have these unwanted edges here that just don't make any sense to have. So we can get rid of these by, instead of just deleting them, which would ruin the mesh completely, you want to make sure that you don't delete the faces. So if we hit X and go to dissolve edges, it will act like that never happened. So there's multiple ways of deleting something and manipulating vertices and edges and what have you. You can also, let's say, go to faces, click a face. If you want to pull this face out instead of adding another object onto it, you can just hit E for extrude, and then it will always go in the Z axis. And you can click this, let's click 1, so it goes to 1. Over in the bottom left corner, it will show you that what dimension you typed in. And then you can say scale, go up, extrude, go up, let's type in 2, and then extrude. And if you just click without moving the mouse, it will stay right there. And as you can see, there's extra faces in here by those extra dots. So if we scale from right here, go inwards, we can actually extrude again, but towards the inside. And now we have a hole. And you can always edit this hole however you'd like. You can move these however you like. And there's actually a way to better extrude something to where it always does this, but not to add too much, but I will show you with, if you hit I, it will, I guess, more uniformly pull that in and kind of skips a step there. So if you extrude down, now you have this perfect cube. So if we go out of edit mode, we have our object right here. And by the way, there will usually be a camera and a light here. You can always delete those at any time. And if you want to completely select everything, say we have multiple objects in our scene, or we have the camera and light, And first thing you want to do whenever you first open up your program, you just want to delete everything. You can hit A to select all or unselect all. Deselect and select by hitting A. So even if you have two things selected, you hit A and it will deselect everything. And it will always highlight with yellow instead of the red orange here on whatever active object you have. So if we click there, if we shift click, you can select extra objects, and whichever one you click last will be your active object. So if you want to deselect everything, select all, it will always keep that last active object. So if you want to just delete everything, which will be shown here at the top right, you can just delete everything when you first get into your scene. And if you want it to always start up this way, you can go to Save Up Start File, but make sure that you don't have any other settings changed because it will always load this way. So if you want to add a new object in your scene, you can Shift A, or you can go to Add whatever object you'd like. I have a whole bunch of extra things here, but don't pay any attention to that for right now. You can add a mesh object right here, and you're going to have these objects right here to worry about. So you have, oh, let me scroll all the way up here. You have a plane, which is a 2D object, and you have cube, which is going to be the most that you use to start off with. You have two different types of spheres, oh, also a circle, but you have a UV sphere, which is going to be all these parallel lines going to the center here, or you have an isosphere, an isometric sphere, which is going to be made of triangles, which you can also choose how many triangles you want here. But if you ever go too high, it will slow your computer down. It might look nice, but it will slow your computer down if you have too many vertices, faces, triangles. And this is how much memory I think it's taking. But yeah, this is going to be how large your object here, how much data it's going to be. So 2 is going to be perfect. Delete that. Add a cube. And then you can always edit. You can hit G for grab, choose a direction, choose a different type of selection here, Control B for bevel, choose a face. You can choose I if you want to kind of make this hollow, extrude backwards. And at any time, if you want to see what is inside your object, say you cannot tell how far this is inside of it exactly, you can hit Z, which will change your view, which is going to be here. So you have rendered, material, solid, texture, and wireframe. Wireframe is going to be Z. So at any time you can look around holding the middle mouse button and you can see inside of your object. So if you want to kind of line that up to where they look about right, you can do it that way, or the way that I make everything actually line up and to a specific measurement. Then I'm going to use my magnet tool. I'm going to make sure it's on vertices almost all the time. Going to make sure it's on closest, center, and median. Sometimes these work, but closest is going to work most of the time. And now it's going to go to whatever vertex you're hovering over. So if we want to go to here, obviously that's going to look bad, but now we can unselect our, there you go, now it shows the shortcut Shift Tab to turn on and off our magnet. So if we turn it off, we can now move it, but from the very end of that, and we can move it to, let's look at the numbers down there, and we're going to call it 0.0. Actually, I need to go negative 0. Let's try 1. So now it's exactly 0.1 millimeter off the edge here. And if I go to top view, oh, sorry, with 7, top view with number 7 on the number pad, and then hit 5, you can also work this way to where you can see exactly what you're doing. You can select all and unselect, just like with objects, with A. And you have 2 different types of selection tools. You can either hit C and scroll up and down on the mouse wheel. And this is just going to be a circle selection tool. And right click to undo it. I'm going to select all again to deselect everything. Choose vertices here. And say I want to select all of these and then move it. This obviously works if you have a little bit more organic of an object here, but right now we have a very square looking object, so we can actually hit B for box selection tool, click and drag, similar to like AutoCAD, and you can select it that way. And I believe if you do it again, yeah, it will add on to it. But with the circle selection tool, it will always add on unless you use the center click. It will actually remove or erase whatever selections you have. Z to get out of wireframe, 5 to get out of perspective or into perspective out of orthographic. And now let's say we wanted this as some strange box. We can rotate on the X axis, and if you want to make sure that it's exactly 90 degrees, you can see that it's going into the negative at the bottom left. So we can hit negative 90, or you can simply type it in over on the x-axis over here, which you can, by the way, click and drag to scroll on any of these values. So let's just set this to 0, tab, 0, tab, 0, tab, negative 90. And now we have our little box here. And we can control A to apply rotation and scale. So now rotation is going to say 0, and it was like we made this object directly like this.